latinos anden despertando. Abre los ojos para ver lo que está pasando. No quieren que los latinos anden despertando. What's up, everybody? Welcome back, Latino Free Minds, episode number 27. We're here again with congressional candidate for District 18 in California, Peter Hernandez. It's good to have him back on the show again. How you doing, Peter?
I'm good, thanks, Danny. Two Dannys, right? Danny and Daniel. I'm really good. Thank you for having me back.
Cool. How you doing, Danny?
Doing good. Busy at work. I'm still here at the office. That's why you see this background. That's not really my house.
It's a beautiful home.
Yeah. They don't need to know. Cool. But yeah, we wanted to have you on again, Peter, to kind of talk about your campaign and kind of the things that you're mainly focused on, right? I guess the way I could put it is like your 4 or 5 top issues or key items that when when you're campaigning, you're going to be campaigning on. Because I think even though, I think people got to understand that even though you're running for a district in California, putting you in Congress is going to help the entire nation out, right? Because your vote is going to not just affect the people in District 18, but everybody else. And, that's one of the reasons that, as here as the podcast or lead, we endorse you because, you're a good guy and you are going in the right direction, so to speak. I think you're in it for the right reasons. And I believe Danny agrees with me when I say that. But yeah, we kind of wanted to go maybe 4 or 5 of the key points that you wanted to touch on for your campaign.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, I'd love it for us to be free flowing because I love feedback. I mean, at the end of the day, we're getting better every day at connecting with the voters. I mean, so when I think about the what are the things that need to be dealt with, I when I get into Congress, um, I would argue the number one thing is the freedom the public has to be successful, right? And and that's not an overgeneralization because there's different things attached to that, right? And I'll touch on those things, but right off the bat, the economy, uh, the fact that we have been so climate change driven is it's frustrating because back in I don't know if you guys remember how old you guys are, but when I was younger, it was it was global warming was the
The
keynote.
ozone layer
Yeah,
in middle
yep,
school. Yeah.
yeah. It was global warming, the keynote
Mhm.
message,
Yeah.
which that's the way they framed it, right? And this was Al Gore, who was telling everybody you shouldn't be basically consuming um, things
Was it
that
like
are oil based, right? We're not using gas, which comes from the ground, and so that they were, but all the while he was flying his jet across the country, telling people this, um, that fossil fuels is the number one destroyer of the ozone layer and the burning of the fossil fuels, right? And it's become a really, to me, the worst part about his message has been the fact that he can look you straight in the eye and lie to you, and he has
yeah.
no problem doing that because we know all along that his big message about supposedly reining in, which sounded a little bit more realistic, or at least it made more sense. Not to say that I agreed with it. Was yeah, well, I guess fossil fuels, yeah, they're dirtier burning, right? Coal based, especially too. So it makes sense, but all they were doing was trying to create this fear and literally uh, somehow emotionally you tie you to saying, yeah, we need to figure out how to do that. And at the same time, he had nothing. There was no real working with the economy or the people that actually produce energy to figure out cleaner ways, which the industry, even just for efficiency's sake, has already been working on those things. They're it's in their best interest to
Mhm.
provide a better, more efficient, cost effective, cleaner, right? All those things. I don't know anybody who says, yeah, I want dirtier, non efficient energy, right? Everybody wants more efficient, cleaner. There's actually a book that I've been meaning to read. I bought it. It's called Smaller. Let me get it real quick. And from Robert Bryce, I've said before, knowledge is power. It's called Smaller, Faster, Lighter, Denser, Cheaper. And he just makes the argument. Look, this is not an issue that's partisan. It shouldn't be a partisan issue, right? Everybody wants cleaner energy. Everybody wants efficient energy. But my point in mentioning that is this whole idea of climate change now they changed the buzzword, is it looks you in the eye and it has you afraid, puts them in the driver's seat with the policies, and they're actually making us poorer in the process,
It's
because
killing the economy.
it's destroying the economy. Who is the one that suffers the most? Should be the number one question. When you use government to force a market to change its ways like really quick without any real logistics or like Gavin Newsom saying 2026 no more fossil fuel engines. Crazy. Like
Mhm.
these people are crazy.
It's not even realistic at that point, and
It's
they don't
not.
even have a plan for it. And
Yes.
right now you're mentioning Al Gore, with all the global warming, concerns that he had. Well, it's funny that they all get richer at the same time while it's killing the economy.
Excellent
And then they're
point.
saying that California is going to be underwater, but they continue to buy mansions, multi-million dollar mansions by the beaches.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So it doesn't make any sense. It makes sense that they're for them, they just keep getting wealthier and wealthier as, the rest of, middle class, lower class gets poorer.
That's right. So you hit it in the nail on the head. And so yeah, so they're crushing our economy, and it's the lower income folks that are suffering the most with these policies, right? You take away fossil fuels, which is the cheapest, from third world countries, you're basically starving them to death. You're crushing their economy. You're telling them they gotta. I mean, right now you have some countries that they burn dung for heat, right? They burn basically human waste. That's not healthy. You can have fossil fuels through and it's funny because now the current fossil fuel production is way cleaner. I mean, we're still buying gas. Now we have higher octane, which is basically when you put your nose out the back, not to say that you should, you could barely smell it, right? Before
Mhm.
you could smell it. You go to Mexico where it's petróleo, it's a lot dirtier, it's thicker, right? It burns not as efficient, but it's cheaper in that sense. Either way, relative separate from that, you're still having basically a cleaner form of energy, even though it's fossil fuels. And
Yeah.
if there's a market change, that market change needs to happen from the private sector, not government. Government just messes everything up, right?
Yeah.
Because they're not people that are in the business world. They're not engineers. They're not scientists. They're not doctors. They're not individuals that understand the dynamics of this and do the deep dive. They just have the idea and it sounds good and they make it into a buzzword. So, anyways,
Yeah.
that was a long-winded way of saying is we need to be energy independent.
Mhm.
We need to let the market figure out how to be cleaner. We need to preserve the interest of the economy of our country, because energy independence isn't just about the economy. It actually is about national security. If we don't have the energy, right, we just gave away a bunch of our what's it called? Our basically our supply chain. We limited it, right? We don't allow permitting and leases anymore, right? Or they totally limited them. But then they're our own petroleum reserves. The U.S.'s reserves are down to very low. I mean, God forbid we ever get attacked. Are we going to have even the energy to defend ourselves, right? Because all the equipment that we have, right, these tanks and all the airplanes, I mean, they all require fossil fuels to run. There's not electric jets. It just, you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
uh, it's just the reality that there's no real practical perspective from the left from the hyper left doing this. And climate change, the last point I'll make, there's no real measurement to what they're trying to achieve. They're not saying, hey, once we reach this point, we're good, right?
Yeah.
They always put it out there as this very relative, very general, like we just want to have policies to better the climate. Well, what does it mean to better the climate, right? I mean, when you're making something, right, if your car, you want it to be more efficient or you want to get more miles per gallon, they have a way of creating some kind of a formula and say, okay, this is our current scenario. We're going to try to figure out how to get to from a 35 mile a gallon vehicle, we're going to go to 25 miles a gallon. Or, I'm sorry, 45 miles or 55 miles, right? We're going to figure that out. And we're going to show you how it's still going to cost you less money for the 55 miles versus the 35 miles because we are more efficient, right? It burns cleaner. It burns better, right? The technology is advancing so it can burn better. There's none of that with climate change. There's
Yeah.
there's no goalpost that says once we reach, and everybody can understand what that goalpost is. So all that's
You right now that you're talking about that, I actually heard this a couple of days ago. There's a country where they're going to slaughter a bunch of cows for the same reason, for the greenhouse gases. And if we don't nip this in the bud, we don't have a representative that nips it in the bud, we can potentially get to that point here in the United States
right.
where they start, wanting to slaughter, cattle or, whatever um, animals that, used to feed us. So it's a real slippery slope and dangerous one if we don't put a stop to it.
And to your point, Daniel, if there's no way to measure government success, then they can do whatever they want. It'll be the Ronald Reagan days when he spoke and he said in that speech, really profound speech, A Time for Choosing, and I recommend people look it up. He says, basically that the actuarial head back in the day when the Medi-Cal I'm sorry, Social Security was on the ropes. They were in $1 million. I don't know how many million, I can't remember, but there were millions of dollars in deficit. That means they were in the hole. The actuarial head was on record publicly saying it's okay if we're in the hole because as long as we have the power to tax, we can always add to it whatever we've lost. Basically, we can always take more from the people, whatever we're missing. Like that is a dangerous perspective, but that is the reality of a lot of people in government. They're like, it's okay if we're in debt, we'll just tax the people. And every time they tax with inflation and all these things, all you're doing is now you're shouldering that debt, not in just our children, but our children's children and their next generations are going to have to pay for that. So there's no balancing of the budget mindset in Washington D.C. They just did a $4 trillion another increase, right? This big budget bill. It's dangerous the way that these people are thinking. There's no accountability, and so back to the point, energy independence needs to be a very clear solution, and ultimately, I think it needs to be it needs to be part of the plan to rein in these agencies that are or these individuals that are trying to basically steal from the poor people, the ones that are going to suffer the most.
Yeah, no, yeah, I totally agree with that. And I think one thing that you said that's important to emphasize is that yeah, when it comes to energy and independence, we're at the weakest we've ever been. And I think this is one of the things that I think even Biden, I think it was a mistake that he made in saying that even our ammunition like reserves are low. So because you had kind of said like if anyone wanted to attack us or tried to do something to us, I mean, this administration has set us up just for that, you know.
Right.
And it's not to sound exaggerated or like I'm fear mongering, but yeah, it feels like it. You can see that it's like the weakest we've probably ever been. I feel like we're unprepared for anything right
That's
now
right.
at this point. We've been weakened by the people that should be leading us.
That's right. Yep. Yeah, and that's why I appreciate you guys because you guys are about educating the public, and I mean, I think people need to understand how much power they carry. They
Mhm.
really do have a lot of power, the people, but they have to believe in themselves enough to get involved. And fine, this is a lot of information. It's hard
Mhm.
to digest in the beginning, but
Yeah.
But if basically corruption advances when the people fall asleep and they don't
Mhm.
hold the government accountable. And technically speaking, an elected, it's funny because most people don't realize also is an elected, their job is to be the eyes and ears of the people for government
Mhm.
abuse. Like our government, according to the Constitution, was created to literally be the chains. Right? I'm trying to remember which founder said, but he said to bind them down with the from mischief with the chains of the Constitution. The Constitution is literally supposed to be the chains to anchor down anybody who's intent to abuse. That's why the Bill of Rights actually they call them negative rights because if you read it's shall not right Congress shall not
Mhm.
or what is it I have it right here um
Infringe.
yeah it's you know Congress shall not I was thinking of the First Amendment yeah oh, shall make no law. I'm sorry. That's where I lost it. Congress shall make no law. It's saying there's not going to be any law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof or abridging the freedom. So it's talking about the other five freedoms, right? Speech, press, association. So they're negative rights because it says shall make no law. The Second Amendment, um, you know, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. You
Mhm.
know, Amendment number 3, no shoulder shall in times of peace be quartered in any house. Anyways, if you read through all the individual amendments, they're
Mhm.
actually rights that say government can't do this.
Right.
Like whatever it's talking about, that thing, government can't do that. It's limiting government. It's saying, hey, by the way, and actually, if you read the preamble of the Bill of Rights, it specifically says, in order to prevent misconstruction or abuse of its powers, that further declaratory and restrictive clauses should be added, and as extending the ground of public confidence in the government will best ensure the beneficent ends of the institution. Basically, it's saying is these Bill of Rights were written specifically to say, just in case you don't know what we mean, these actual other amendments are to actually say even clear these amendments specifically are rights that you don't have government, the people have them, and
Mhm.
and actually that speaks to the trying to remember the I want to say it's the ninth or the 10th amendment um that that
The ninth, I believe, is basically stating like if even if they're not written on here, you still have more rights than this.
yeah
And
oh
I
yeah
think the
I was
10th
gonna,
is the
it's
state and the people have the power.
that's awesome. I love it. I love it when my mi gente do their homework. That's awesome. Um, yeah, so it's the 10th Amendment. You're right. The power not delegated to the United States by the Constitution nor prohibited by it to the states are reserved to the states respectively or to the people. That, in a little bit of a complex way, it's saying anything that any right that you can assume exists, government, just know by default it goes right to the people. It belongs to them. So if you say, "Hey,
Mhm.
there's a new right that we think exists," that guess what? Because it's not written in the Constitution, so anything not written here automatically belongs to the states or to the people. Technically, they're referencing the people. Um,
Mhm.
so it's really profound. People need to know that. They need to know that. Um,
Yeah.
and a lot of these things that have changed have been because people have abused it. The government has people in office, and because the people aren't obviously paying attention, then it's easy to take advantage of something when they're not paying attention.
Yeah. And then one thing that because you said when you started how the people need to understand they have the power. Um, Danny has all along said we're the majority, right? And it's true because the whole Bud Light thing, the majority is winning that.
Yep.
Sound of Freedom, they didn't want that one out, but the majority, I think it hit 100 million this
Hmm.
week. So the majority speaking out on that.
And then
And here in California, when the SB 14 uh oh, I'm going blank, when they didn't pass it at first,
the human trafficking,
the
third
child
strike.
trafficking third
Hmm.
strike, how it didn't pass, and then the people were, and rightfully so, outraged or upset at that, even to the point where even Newsom had to be like, whoa, I got to change course here. You
Right.
know, I think he's trying to do that to seem a little. I think he's trying to set himself up for the future. I think he's trying to make himself look appealing to both sides, if you will. But if the people didn't speak up and then just go, ah man, we lost another one, or and then just kept it to themselves. That's the thing. It's like we're the majority, right? And one thing that I don't like is being the silent majority.
That's right.
I think we need to stop that. We need to speak up. We need to be the loud majority now, because we've been silent for too long, and it hasn't helped us. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And that's why when that SB 14 thing got revived and got moving again, I was happy, because it's like, yeah, the people are speaking up. Like, this is what it's supposed to be like.
That's where the change comes in, and people are, yeah.
And one of the things that I've always said too is that when it comes to the kids and people's money, people are going to speak up, and it just happens to be, look, that's a perfect example right there. It was about the kids, and they spoke up. But these are good things that are happening, in the sense people would see them as negatives, and I always say this. I always like to look at the positive. Being a natural optimist is that that they're doing this out in the open. It's opening up people's eyes. So when they open up their eyes in um, in that topic, in that area, it's naturally going to open it up in others. So hopefully it's like a domino effect that's happening. But I'm looking at that in a positive perspective. So in it, like Daniel said, those are good things that are happening right now. So we can't get down on ourselves in that sense, and basically just to understand and see the validation that we are the majority.
That's right. That's
Mhm.
right. Agreed. Yeah. Daniel touched on it a little bit, but yeah, the other one is when it comes down to our border, the human trafficking. It's
Mhm.
been a profound revelation to me, to be honest with you. I've always known there's an issue with the border. My family came illegally, right? They eventually became citizens. They love this country. So do I. I mean, I was born here because of the Reagan amnesty, in all full disclosure. But I love this country. I mean, I read my constitution. I have it right behind me, along with, my time in office, serving as a county supervisor. But the thing, I think that the big dynamic shift that's happening, that or at least it's been happening, is the change in mindset when it comes to the border, because human trafficking is becoming such a real thing to individuals, to families, right? They're seeing these things. I've mentioned it to my Democrat family members, and they're like, it's a quiet moment, because what do you say about that, right? When children are being sold like drugs to sex traffickers, right? And then and the Sound of Freedom really brought a revelation to it. All to the point is it really made me think about, and really, want to pray about, is so when you think about a port of commerce, right? You think about Oakland, San Francisco, San Diego, right? So there's all these areas where commerce happens, international commerce, right? So it's the big, the separation is the water, the body of water between one country to the next. Technically speaking, we don't have a body of water, obviously, at our southern border in California, but it's still a border, and it's a port now of commerce for people, for children, for women, right? For underage children. And us as Latinos, we can't ignore that. We have to figure out what it means to reconcile that. Yes, we want our families to come across that border and enjoy enjoy these liberties.
Mhm.
We actually need to know what these liberties are, like I said earlier, so that we know how to preserve these very things. Because I wouldn't imagine anybody would cross the border to say, oh yeah, I'm going to go to a country to destroy it, to make it worse. Like, no, I want to enjoy the benefits of it, which means we need to fight to preserve those things that have made it great for other people, right? If we want to be able to buy a house, right? If we want to be able to not have to worry about being forced to wear a mask or take a vaccine, right? In communist countries, you don't have a choice. This is not one, right? It shouldn't be, or at least it's starting to look like one. But
Yeah.
Yeah.
but anyways, the very things that we enjoy, we have to fight for. We have to preserve. We have to restore, right? I'm a Christian man, and I believe in reconciliation. I definitely do believe there's an opportunity to reconcile with the Latino community that's come over, and come up with a solution for that. So, some kind of a solution for an illegal. But there's got to be a citizenship taking, basically a sentiment to take ownership over your citizenship. to say, yes, I want to be a citizen. And maybe we need to clean up that process to make it easier, but easier as far as time, not easier as far as basically taking ownership. Like, meaning you're going to come here, you're going to prove that you want to preserve the very things that made this nation great, right? You're going to understand the Constitution. You're going to understand your rights. You're going to try to make sure that you know the rule of law, right? What are the laws of the land to make sure you preserve those so everybody else benefits. Otherwise, what we have is what we have in Europe, where it's a very tribal system, right? You have different nationalities, different nations living in Europe, and there's no, you basically, and I don't know if you guys followed Europe, but they've actually had these like autonomous zones where you have kind of this segment of people, this ethnicity, like Muslims or different types of religions, and they literally create this little world right there in Europe where they have authority to enact their own laws that are separate from that nation. Like, that doesn't make any sense when you have different laws under the same country, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I've heard of them. They call them no-go zones because the authorities from that country or that city can't even go in there.
That's right.
Because they have their own laws, like you mentioned.
And that's a tribal system.
Yeah. Isn't that like, I think France, right? They were having those riots.
That's right.
Wasn't it kind of it's related to that, right?
Yeah. And I think part of what's triggered the riots too was there was a change that Macron made where he wanted to increase the years when they could
retirement,
some kind of retirement, because they have a different system over there where government takes care of you the moment you retire, and so and that's why they have these long, you get 2 months off and you still get paid to be able to go on. I think they call it holiday, right? You take off for a month, and so anyways, but back to the whole immigration thing is we need to close up that border, come up with a simpler process. Yes, make it easier in the sense of understanding what is the process and how setting the expectation of how long it's going to take for them to become citizens, right? Maybe there should be another bracero program for the workers, right? And maybe there should also be some kind of another process for a simpler process, really, which when it comes down to what's it called, asylum seekers. But bottom line, efficient, transparent, agreeable to this country, right, to the majority of the population, because this is going to be something we'd have to debate at the House. But it's got to be something that, yes, preserves the interest of this nation first.
Yeah. And it has to be clear and concise, something that you can understand.
Correct. Yeah. And I meet tons of people, Latinos and otherwise, that aren't here legally, and they do love this country. They want to know what it means to love it more. I mean, when when I'm out there talking in Espanol to potential voters, and they don't know about the Bill of Rights, they don't know about the stuff that we mentioned: inalienable rights, separation of powers, due process. You're innocent before proven guilty. In Mexico, you're guilty before proven innocent.
Yeah.
If they assume you're in trouble or you did something wrong, they'll throw you in jail to find out if you did something wrong, and then they'll let you out of jail to say, no, you didn't do anything wrong. That's not our country. In our country, you have to work really hard to prove someone's guilt, because then at least when you throw them in jail, it's because you actually found out that they are guilty. You're not just saying we're going to throw a ton of innocent people in jail. It's a different system that when Latinos understand, I think they'll fight to protect it. So,
it's really interesting too, because there's a reason why all these people from other countries, and specifically, let's say Mexico, want to come to the United States, but they don't know the reasons behind why they want to come over. And it's basically everything that you're saying. So they have to be educated in that sense so that they can protect it. Right. You said it earlier. Who wants to come to a country and turn it into the country they just came from? That's right. It makes absolutely no sense whatsoever.
Right. Right. Amen.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if you had anything else to share, Danny, but I was going to move on to my next goal so this is actually very personal, because I've dealt with the abuse of this at the local level, and it has to do with the lack of understanding of where the power resides as far as so basically what are the authorities given under the Constitution to the three branches, right?
Mm-hmm.
The simple reality is the legislative writes the laws, right? The the executive executes those laws, and the judicial interprets those laws, meaning they're going to try to beat it up to find out if it actually stands the constitutional test, right? Which is an awesome system. And it's funny because it actually, as a Christian, it makes me really proud because the three branch government is actually in our Bible. I don't know if people that are Christians realize that, right? I think it's Isaiah, I want to say 22, but it says, the Lord is our lawgiver, the Lord is our judge, the Lord is our king, he will save us. In history, the king was the executive, right?
Mm-hmm.
Ours, in our country, the king was actually taken off of the throne. People don't know that, in the sense that you do have an executive who plays kind of the individual that basically oversees executing the laws, but he's considered a citizen. He's not a monarch. It actually specifically states in the Constitution he can't be a patriarch, or I'm sorry, not patriarch, monarch, or it can't be, what am I thinking? The basically a high society, high class, a system where, for those, again, back to the whole, because our founders did come from Europe,
Yeah.
the system of nobles, right, where you have kind of these monarchs, these power, you over here you would call them the elites, right? They're the people that have
Yeah.
a lot of power,
Mhm.
they have a lot of influence, they have a lot of money, so they can buy influence, right? That's not our country. In our country, the president is just a citizen. That's all he has, power. So he's actually, that's why, and it requires the citizen to be able to have to run the military, right? So he can technically declare war, but he's a citizen doing that. So it's pretty profound because he can't turn the military on his own country. He doesn't have that right to, and that's why there's an appropriations process that every 2 years you have to re-sign up basically that budget to make sure that you can fund the military, because there's the checks and balances that takes that power away from the executive. So if a president tries to all of a sudden do this crazy stuff and take control of his own country with his military, our government actually says your constitution does not allow you to do that. Every 2 years you have to reapply for that funding. Um, that's why
And
they have the National Defense Authorization Act.
yeah.
Um, so it's pretty profound stuff. They thought through a lot of different things to make this system work.
Yeah.
And the reason they did that is because they suffered from all of that. So they
Bingo.
had it fresh in their minds, and they were taking notes.
That's right.
We
Bingo.
just
And it,
forgotten. We've forgotten.
yeah.
What's that saying? Good times make weak men, and difficult times make strong men.
Yeah.
Amen. Yeah.
Yeah. No, and then kind of what you're talking about, it kind of feels like, we're kind of going through that because you see this two-tiered system, right? Where it feels like people are above the law, right? And these institutions that are in place that should be making sure that that's not happening feels like they're contributing to them too. So, it's definitely something that I think you're kind of leading to, is like their authorities definitely need to be clarified and make sure that they're, being held to that. Nothing more, nothing less. Because right
Well,
now, I think it's a bunch of overreach and
And we're
people
seeing
aren't,
it real time right
we're
now.
seeing it real time. Yeah.
Yeah, we're seeing it with Hunter Biden, Joe Biden, everything that's
Trump's
coming
been
out.
indicted. He's gonna go on his third one already, I think, or something
crazy.
like that. So
Yeah, yeah, he's on his third one. So to bring it back to what I was mentioning is, um, so as a county supervisor, right, a month after the lockdown, so I did agree as a county supervisor to shut down because we didn't know what this virus was. Everybody was scared, right? People were spraying down their
they're free.
groceries with with what's it called, sanitizer liquid or whatever. People were worried, and it was a very real fear. All of us had it.
Mhm.
It was a scary time, and I I'm blown away that God would. I guess in that sense, I should be honored that the Lord would allow me to be in a position of authority in the middle of the toughest times, I would argue. So, but I was engaged and I was focused by God's grace, and so I would I was intentional in trying to reach out to my public health officer to work with me. Like, okay, explain this to me. How are you telling me that a small business is non-essential and needs to shut down, while a brick and mortar that's all it is basically a bigger version of that small business, right? Like Target or Costco can stay open. They have
Hmm.
more people in there. Technically, there's more risk because there's more people, right? There's more. If there's more virus, then it's going to spread amongst a lot more people faster. In a small brick and mortar, and that was my argument to the public health officer publicly, was small businesses don't have that issue. They actually can limit it, which I've seen it. Small
Hmm.
businesses, even before the shutdowns were happening, you had some businesses saying, one person at a time come into my shop, right? You come
Mhm.
in and you got to wear a mask, right? And I have a mask, and they put up a glass and all this stuff, right? Everybody wants to be super safe. But the economy needed to keep moving because people get sick from other things. And if they can't go to the doctor because now they're delaying treatment and all these things, people are going to suffer. People that have heart conditions and all this stuff, right? So at the end of the day, it didn't make sense. So I challenged the health officer. He was technically an administrator of the state per se, even though we hired him under the law of the California state law. He was given the authority to, or he's required basically that we need to have a public health officer on staff in the middle of a pandemic. So we were required to do that, and we hired him. But that doesn't mean he has the authority. And my point to him was, work with me, help me figure this out. These businesses are ready to figure out how to make it safe, but don't just say we're going to shut you down. And then they started coming out with the color coded and all this other stuff. So I dealt with it
Hmm.
personally. Um, I saw it through OSHA, right, where the governor was using OSHA to threaten businesses. Hey, by the way, now there's workplace safety. We're going to add the viruses, something in the air to workplace safety, which OSHA has never done before, right? OSHA normally would deal with, basically safety situations where, you can't carry a certain amount of weight, or there's a ladder, you can't, you
Got to be tied off, secured, all
got to
that
be
good stuff.
tied down, and yeah, you got to have fire extinguishers and all these other things. Um,
PPE, yeah.
so that OSHA came in. They even used ATF. They used local police. Now all of a sudden they became the mask police. In my county they had a hotline, an anonymous hotline, so now you can snitch on your neighbors. And all of a sudden businesses were being narked on and businesses were being shut down. So it was very scary times, and the government just made it worse. So to the point, there needs to be a reining in of these administrative agencies. There
Hmm.
needs to be, I think, a stripping of authority of state level agencies and there needs to be a restoring of local control that says any agency that enters into our county, it's still under the guise of our local board of supervisors, which are locally elected, for them to be able to dictate the rules. And if we don't, basically, we need to force the state to have a relationship with the local authorities to be able to work together, and it's got to make sense. The public needs to be involved in the conversation, right? The best sanitizing solution is the sun, right? Sunlight. So we need sunlight on all these things. And these agencies, people don't realize there's actually laws that they're basically writing. They won't call them laws. They have a code, right? The OSHA has a code, right? The FDA, all these agencies, the CDC, they have codes, right?
Mhm.
That it's their own norms and their own rules for how they practice,
The regulations.
but they're their own. Yeah, they're basically their own regulations, but those regulations are still requirements on its local body. So if the CD or if OSHA says something that you have to do, safety a certain way, then
Hmm.
they'll tell the locals, hey, this is what you got to do. And my own attorney, my own local attorney, is basically telling me, Peter, we got to do what the state says. And I'm like, yeah, I don't care what the state says. I wasn't elected by them. I was elected by my locals. That doesn't make sense to me. And yeah, I didn't. I did. Obviously, my county council didn't like that, and my own supervisors. Peter, what are you doing? I'm like, you guys don't realize how much power you're giving away to the state, and you're making yourself seem very impotent. You're not even
Mhm.
capable of solving your own problems. You're waiting for the life raft of the state to solve your problems while you're drowning, right? You're waiting for a long distance relationship to save you when you have your locals here that can
Yeah.
actually fix the problem because we have money and we have resources, but you're not allowing us to use it because you're worried about the state.
But you know what the issue too is that they do it under the guise of trust the science, believe the science.
Yeah.
But even it's coming out that that science wasn't even accurate science anymore.
Yep.
So
Yep.
at what point do they stop and go, wait, let's really look at this science and see if it's factual?
Amen.
Yeah.
100%.
So, you know, and that's the question that I've always had is that why is it that these agencies um, put out mandates, and what really is a mandate? You know, it's not a law, it's not a requirement, but like to your point, everybody that was fighting you wanted to follow these mandates. They wanted to follow these instructions. They wanted to follow this science that had been laid out without questioning it
Hmm.
whatsoever.
That's right. Amen. That's such a good point. And you're right. And I appreciate that you said that because you're making the distinction that a mandate doesn't mean it's a law. You know, you can tell me what you want me to do all day long. Unless it's codified in the constitutional law that literally says this has been signed and sealed, we've done our homework, and this is why you have to do it. There is no have to do anything, and
Hmm.
that's how schools were abusing the process because they were saying, "Well, it's a mandate. Tell me where that mandate is tied to an actual law," and then they would try to come up with new. They try to anchor it to something. Oh well, OSHA. Here's the law, Peter. It's OSHA. Supervisor Hernandez. It's here. It is. OSHA is not a lawmaking body. Why are you pointing me to OSHA? OSHA
Mm-hmm.
has zero authority over the law. Their job is to implement any laws that were codified prior to them by the legislature, whether it's the state or the locals, right?
Hmm.
Um, so all these things have been just flipped around on its head as far as the actual authority. And definitely, I'm very, very hungry to strip them of that authority because they're growing in numbers, and the bigger the government, because they're shadow agencies, right? They work, you know, and just for analogy's sake, it's they do work in the dark, right? Where they write rules, you're not paying attention to those rules. I mean, look at AB 665. Although that is a legislative bill, you know, AB 957 also. Actually, I think it's 957, the one that uses uses a it amends the family code, and family code is under the judicial system that basically says if you're not an affirming parent that affirms the gender change, right? Their gender, if they want to change their gender, if in a custody battle you're not affirming that child, then you lose your custody rights. You basically lose your parents' rights.
Yeah.
That's done through the family code. That's too, you know, maybe that was a bad example, but um, you know, you have actually another example is the EPA under the Chevron doctrine, and that's actually something that I recommend your audience to follow, to look up the Chevron doctrine. The Chevron doctrine is specifically anchored to um, having to do with the EPA trying to rewrite law when it comes down to you know, fossil fuel extractions. So they set certain requirements that made it super hard for companies to be able to, you know, basically pull oil from the ground.
Hmm.
So it ended up, you know, it always basically put a lot of delay and cost, and it made it more technical and complicated, ultimately making it hard for a company to get things done, to, you know, to do their job. So that's supposed to come forward before the Supreme Court. They expect it to strike it down because the Chevron doctrine, by default, means is they're looking to redefine or clarify, I should say, like we spoke earlier. It's actually looking to clarify what is the authority of the EPA as an executive agency under the you know, basically under the president, right? The executive of the three branch government. So EPA doesn't have lawmaking power, but I read already one of the opinions under the Chevron doctrine, actually have it saved. It specifically mentions that they are not only are they not a lawmaking power, but they're using basically nuanced terminology to change that to ultimately implement what becomes a new law without saying that it's a law. They're
Mm-hmm.
according to them, they're trying to implement, but in reality they're writing new laws. So that Supreme Court case is intended to rein them in and say, nope, you can't do this anymore because you're doing things that don't belong to you. And ultimately, as a, you know, Supreme Court, the judicial branch, it's their job to rein in constitutional abuses. Um,
Hmm.
so there's just so many examples of abuse of administrative agencies. I would argue the bigger the government, it's become its own. And I do a lot of homework, so just listening to Dr. Larry Arndt, he basically says is now officially you have administrative agencies having their own self-interest in existence or in existing. They
Hmm.
have a reason to exist, and it has nothing to do with representation. Because if you think about it, they have power, they have money, and they can do whatever they want with it.
Yeah.
That by default puts them in a position to always want to protect that power,
Yeah.
right? It's
Well,
unconstitutional.
that's like what I do, right, with work. I deal with OSHA, right? Well, when things happen, I deal with them, and just kind of relating it to what you just said. It's like there's times where they'll tell us it's already happened. Oh, there's nothing wrong. You guys, as a company, no violation. You guys did everything you could, but we're still gonna fine you. And it's like, all right, what's the point? And like you said, it's like they have their interest, right? I'm pretty sure they got to make some kind of money to keep all their people going, and it just becomes about that. And you don't even trust that. You don't trust OSHA no more. You
No,
don't trust the EPA, the CDC, because they didn't do anything that was in the best interest for the people. They just do what's gonna keep them in power, and a lot of the times they go unchecked.
that's
And I
right.
think that's what you're getting at is we gotta put that check, that balance with those places, and like you said, limit them, because yeah, it just makes the government feel way bigger, and you know we don't we definitely don't want that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. The
Yeah.
abuse part of it. I mean, sorry. Go ahead, Daniel.
No, what I was going to say for, maybe people that are listening to us right now, the best way to put it in perspective for them is like, even if at work, certain departments have budgets, right? So at the end of the year, they go around, a certain department might go around saying, hey, we have so much money in the budget, we need to spend it so that we can increase it, next quarter or next year. It's the same thing. And, they need to be incentivized to keep the budget down so that they're saving more money instead of spending more money and the department getting bigger.
Yeah,
And there, we go back to the checks and balances, maybe incentivizing and keeping it smaller.
right.
But I think people can relate to that, at work and what the government does in these different agencies of the federal government.
Hmm.
Yeah. How Ronald Reagan put it best. I think he said, "The more the planners fail, the more the planners plan." Uh, and
Damn.
that's just the reality. In our government, failure is a step up. It
Hmm.
literally gives you an opportunity because you're not measured against your success. You're just measured against the work you do, right? So it's busy work. You could write up a bunch of papers, you could do a bunch of studies, you can spend a bunch of money and get nothing done with it, and you're still considered, to a certain extent viable. Like they still need you because
Hmm.
self-interest is there for them to keep just doing busy work, right? I mean, I can't tell you when I've read certain things from as a supervisor, I'm like, this is stupid. This makes no sense. Like, why are we even doing this?
Hmm.
Well, and then they'll give me a long explanation. There's all this historical evidence. There's all these different things happening. Um, but there's no real. It comes down to government has no reason to exist or prove its existence on its own.
Yeah.
In a constitutional government has a reason to exist under the guise of the people that gave it life and ultimately gave it power. And that power is on loan temporarily with the expectation that there will be results. So there's a looped relationship with the people. The moment you separate the people from its government, it's no good. It's useless. It literally becomes worthless because it'll take advantage of you.
You just reminded me of a boss I used to have, when I first started working, and he would say there's people that fail, right? They're always gonna fail at what they do, but then there's other people that fail and excel at it.
That's right.
So they go above and beyond the fail. And it's like, yeah, when you're saying that, I thought of that, and I just, yeah, that's what the government is. They
Yeah,
just fail, but they're they double down. Let's get worse.
Yeah. So when it comes, I guess when it comes down to the administrative agencies, my goal is to make them prove their worth. And
Yeah.
if they can't prove it, I'm not going to fund it. It's that simple.
There you
Government's got
go.
to, we got to shrink. I mean, it's kind of the cliche, drain the swamp, but it is. There needs to be a draining of the swamp. And it's
Hmm.
funny how it gives you a visual of a swamp, because the swamp is, it's infested, it's infected, it's like pus. It's basically there needs to be some kind of a cleaning out of that process
The
to make
swamp
sure.
monsters.
Yeah, and yeah,
We
yeah,
got plenty of those.
getting rid of the swamp monsters for sure. So, and
Okay.
all that ties down to, I'll leave it with my kind of final thought is what I've mentioned earlier is the more I think about what's going on with the problems in our government, the more I think about is the government or the people in power have little to no faith in the people. They have my honest opinion, and this is me talking to a lot of electeds, people in office, government officials, right? Administrative agencies. I'm like, you really don't have faith in the people, because if you did, you wouldn't try to control them so much. Granted, the public doesn't fully understand, but to a certain extent, you're only making things worse, and you're by default the public is only they're the ones suffering the most, and they're the ones that are being apathetic or disengaged, right? They're frustrated,
Hmm.
so they don't want to pay attention, right? They have less reason to pay attention. I think politics could be actually really fun and really cool, because if someone's in office that's representing you and doing a good job, and you're seeing the benefits where your community is safer, right? Your roads are fixed, right? You're seeing opportunity for your children. Who wouldn't want to say that is awesome? Like, I want to learn the goodness of our country because I want others to understand how to preserve it. I mean, when it comes down to anything in this world, it's going to break down on its own, right? We have to work to keep it restored, right? We
Yeah.
always have to stay engaged to keep it restored. It's the same thing with our government. We have to constantly work to keep it restored, and I think what it comes down to do that, it really is my honest conviction is the people are the ones that are going to fix it. I'm going to help facilitate that process, but it's all about it. I'm a business owner. I always lean back on that, and God's given me, I think, I would argue a blessing in understanding that if I want my business to succeed, there's no better avenue for me to succeed as a business owner than to provide for my customers what they want. Right? They're going to pay for it because it's a good thing. They enjoy it. If they compare me to my competitor and say, "Yeah, I like Peter's product better," it's because I'm working my butt off to make sure that they're getting what they want. I think that's how policy should be, and
Yeah.
you
Hmm.
know, but it's an honest way. It's not saying the Bernie Sanders process of, "Oh, I just want everybody's loan to be forgiven." No, I want you to understand. Look, if you're asking me to forgive loans, and you're asking me to basically forgive people's choices, right? People are going to make these decisions, spend money, get into debt. Maybe they got into a wrong career path. There's
Hmm.
not going to be any self-correction for a university that just says, "Hey, come on board." I feel like the universities are the new drug dealers. They're like, "Come on board. We got these classes for you. Don't worry about it. We got affirmative action money. We can put you in this class. You might not be good enough yet for it right now. You don't have enough, you haven't gone to school long enough, but let's put you in anyways," right? Then you get the Joy Reids of the world that are saying, "Hey, I'm here because of affirmative action. I didn't really deserve it. I just got it because of my skin color," right? It's like it's literally creating more and more of a self-interest mindset, and it
Hmm.
has less and less about quality, ultimately excellence, right? About what's better, right? Whatever we do in our lives, it should be about excellence, making things better, right?
Hmm.
That's not that means we have to put faith where it belongs. First, I would argue in God, and then second in the very people that we're supposed to serve, right? I mean, even the Bible says, to love your neighbor, the two greatest commandments, to love God with the heart, soul, and mind, and two is to love your neighbor as yourself. That's a
Hmm.
capitalistic sentiment. That means if I'm a business owner, I want to provide for you something that's good for you, something that you can enjoy. I work hard to make your life better, to whether it's some kind of a solution for a disease, some kind of a product for your for when it comes to driving, like your vehicles, right, the efficiency, anything that has to do with an opportunity to make your life better, that is a blessing to be able to do that. And I think that means the market corrections will fix themselves, right? Because the people will solve their own problems. Ultimately, they're the drivers in the in the vehicle, and us as the elected officials, it's our jobs to just make sure we facilitate a process that is equal under the law for everybody. That means everybody has equal opportunity, not equal benefit, right? Because not everybody is as skilled as others, right? Some people have certain skills than others, but at least we create that opportunity for people to be able to be the best that they can be and to use their passions to better our country and ultimately to better our communities.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think one thing that I kind of thought of right now as you were talking is, I think people that go into government, it's like when, when a kid grows up with their parent, and then they become old enough, right? They learn from their parents, right? What their parents have or had or didn't have. And then, in their mind they go, okay, my parents did this, I want to do this to make it better for my kids. And then hopefully that my kids, when they grow, they want to do more than what I did, right? And I think people that go into government should have that mentality. It's like,
Right.
okay, it was good here, but no, we can make it better. And
Yeah.
then the guy that comes after that, no, I could do better than that. And like you said, if people go in with that mentality and serve in government that way to better the people, and it would do what it's intended to do.
Right.
But like you said, it's tough because they're not doing that. It doesn't feel like they're doing that. There's not many of them doing that,
Well, it
right?
goes to Peter's point is that with all these regulations from all these agencies, that's what's killing the economy. Real capitalism is you have a good product, there's going
Yeah.
to be demand for it, and you're going to thrive.
Hmm.
You have a product that isn't good, no one's going to buy it, you're going to fail. And then you get an opportunity to refine whatever your product was or maybe find something else. And then you come back up, people, there's demand for your product, you become successful. But the way that the system is right now with all these regulations and it, it, it's not real capitalism right now. We're not experiencing real capitalism in any way, shape, or form, that you want to think about it, the way that you put it right now, Daniel, and the way that Peter explained it earlier.
Yeah.
So,
Amen.
that's the only way that it's going to happen is, by people like Peter, that just basically outline, what his top priorities are. That's the only way that's going to happen.
Yeah.
People need to understand that.
For sure.
Yeah. And I don't. I want to be there on a short term. I really do. Like this has taken a lot out of me to do all this. But it's out of love for my country. It really is. I mean, I'm praying for the day, guys, that people that run for office, they run out of a love for service and out of a love for seeing their country better than the way that they're, basically their progenitors, right? They're before them, the people that they walk in their footsteps to make that life better for everybody. Um,
Mm.
and it's sad because right now, um, that's not happening. I mean, right now people are sorry about the noise. Someone's messing around outside.
It's all good.
So yeah, I feel like right now people are making politics a lifelong career,
Hmm.
um, and it should never be a career. I think politics should never be a career. I mean, as far as being elected office, should not be a lifelong career ever. The more I think about it, really, if our job is to rein in the government and to make it better, to make it function for the people, then we have to have a short term perspective that says,
Yeah.
I'm one, as more, I'm using it more as symbolically, right? I don't mean literally. I'm like a soldier that serves a tour of duty, right? I'm going to do a tour. I'm going to be in there for a little bit. I'm going to push back on the government that's basically doing things that are harming my community. I'm going to change things. I'm going to simplify things, and then I'm going to get out. Because if I'm not in there forever, then I'm not going to accrue power. I'm not going to accrue money, right? I'm not going to accrue influence. I'm going to be there on a short term, and I'm going to get ready the next person behind me to take my place. Because the more you see people short term there, then the less there's going to be this power grab of people taking control, right? The few taking control of the many. That should never happen, and that's I think because of the lifelong politician's perspective.
Hmm.
Yeah, it opens the door to corruption. Period.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
does. 100%. Yeah, I want to be like George Washington and just I want to retire early. And it's funny because they asked him to be king at first, right?
Mm.
He became president because people kept asking him to, and he just said, "I'm done. I don't want. I, he was done, and he wanted. That's why they specifically made it. I think it was 3 terms prior, but now it's
Mm-hmm.
only 2 terms. You can only serve two
True.
terms, right?
Yeah.
'Cause
No,
it's
I think there should definitely be some term limits in Congress for sure.
I'm
Um,
100% for that.
or at least something where I think it's Brazil, where and I think this is their presidential thing is you can serve 2 terms, and then after those 2 terms, you can't run again for like another 2 terms. But if you want to, come back in 8 years and try again, you can. I think something like that for Congress, at least, where it's like you mix in people and or just set straight term limits. You know what? No more than 8 terms,
Yeah.
whatever. You
Well,
know,
the terms are 2 years, so I would say no more than 6 terms. 12 years, I think.
yeah,
You
that's
know,
good too. Yeah,
12 to 15 years, more than enough.
yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to be 70 years old in there. I don't. I want to be able to have enough life, God willing, to uh to enjoy my family, and it's a lot of sacrifice to run for office. It really is, guys. I mean, my kids don't see me all the time. I'm all over the place. And you're put on committees. You're on all these. You're dealing with all these meetings. You're traveling. It's taxing. But again, I could see myself doing a tour of duty, and focusing on first things first. Start to unwind the craziness and restore power back to the people.
can I ask you a random
Yeah.
question?
Sure,
Would you ever consider running for governor of California?
if the Lord called me to it, I would do whatever the Lord asked me to do.
Yeah, I think California needs someone like you too to run for governor. I think you know, I think a lot of the people we get aren't. You have to have. We've been talking about it recently. It's like you have to have a certain level of toughness, right? Not always
Yeah.
be so nice, but you know, sometimes you got to get, in a sense, mean, but not in a mean way, just strong. And I feel like a lot of people that have run for governor, on the Republican side at least, don't have that. Where it
Fighter.
gets
I
weird.
think the
That
way that we
fighter.
put it is
Yeah,
a fighter spirit.
yeah. So that's
Yeah,
after you're done with Congress.
I stand on principle. I mean, that's what makes my life easier. Honestly, I lean on the Lord a lot, obviously. But I stand on principle, and it makes it easier. And then
Mhm.
I'm honest with people. I'm saying, look, and you have to be around a little bit to know when someone puts their arm around you and they hand you a check, right? To be careful. Um,
Mhm.
and if they do that, and I'm like, look, if you want to donate to my campaign, awesome. Don't expect anything from me, because if you do, then I'd rather you keep your money. I'm just letting you know because I'm not. I have principles, and I'm not going to change. I'm just not. I know what is good and true. I'm not perfect. I mean, I still could learn more. Obviously, I'm still learning a lot more. But what I do feel firm about, yeah, it just you almost you it's kind of like defining the role of the position. You have to define the role of the relationship with people and make it easier for them to know Peter's not going to budge on this. Either stop asking or talk to somebody else. Like, yeah, figure out who you can work with, because and so on certain things, I'm not going to work with people.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not going to work on things that are going to destroy my country, obviously, right? So I'm going to set my limits, and I'm going to define those things, and that way when people start to lobby me, it's like, yeah, that makes no sense. I'm not going to go down that road. And if
Yeah.
people get upset, I mean, I guess the simple point is you have to be okay with people not liking you, and you have to be okay with saying no to people, even powerful people, and
Yeah.
saying no. Yeah, I'm sorry, but I can't do that. I'm not going to do that. And if they hate me for it, they can. And if they go after me for it, then I need to be ready for it. I need to
Yeah.
expect.
We talk about it all the time. Is we use the example of who is going to raise to power faster, or who has the likelihood of gaining that power. And the example is you've got an unethical person, and then you have an ethical person. Someone with morals, without morals. Is the one without morals that's unethical. they're going to take that check and they're going to rise to the top a lot quicker. So, you being, a truth teller, having principles and morals, and standing on those, hopefully people recognize that and, set you on that path, to getting there.
Yeah,
It's
for
God's
sure.
will. Yeah, I'm trusting in Him, and yeah, wherever He has me, I'll be there.
Yeah.
Cool.
Well, God
Cool.
bless. We hope you get there.
Yeah,
Appreciate it.
yeah, for sure.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, well, it's great to have you on again, and like I said, it's 2024, so it's almost what less than a year and a half to go.
Yep.
We'll be here throughout the race, and whatever you need. If you have any other events in San Jose or anything like that, we'll make sure to pop in.
And yeah, pop in, bring some friends. That would be awesome. Yeah, we're gonna start updating our website. We'll post our events. You can go on hernandezforcongress.com is my website. Underscore Hernandez for Congress, I believe, Instagram. And yeah, and I'm on Twitter. I'm on Facebook. It's very easy to find me. Yeah, you can get one of these cool hats. Legalize freedom.
Yeah, it is.
Um,
You sell those? Those are yours?
yeah. So these are my campaign hats. It has even my logo. Sorry, I always.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Peter Hernandez
Cool.
for Congress. It says I am Congressional District 18. Really quick story because I know we got to go. I this hat. It was in a different color. It was after a really long day. I sat down, put the hat on. Was kind of just thinking about the day. Put my daughter on my lap, and I had a really good dinner. It was after a really tough battle on the dais. In the middle of the lockdowns, I brought forward an informed consent resolution, where basically trying to honor the intent and doing a lot of homework, talking to different people. Children's Health Defense. I don't know if you know Alex Mayer. She's come from the Oscar Mayer family. She was a close friend of Robert Kennedy. She supported me as a local guy, which was really cool. She was the statewide representative for Children's Health Defense, and a lot of folks throughout the community, which wasn't partisan at that sense, because Children's Health Defense is not partisan. But bottom line is I had a big turnout. A lot of people lobbied to support me because I brought forward an informed consent resolution that said, under the emergency use authorization, the law, it requires two things. One is to educate the public on whatever they're taking. If it is experimental, that they have a right to know what they're being given. That's why it's called informed consent. Um, and then the second thing is to require that they have the right to say no. That means we would say, look, we want you to take this, but we're not going to force it down. And this happened before the vaccine mandates kicked in. So I felt like it just strong in my heart. By God's grace, I would argue, He was leading me to see that these mandates were coming. I brought that forward. It was a really tough battle. I didn't win, and I didn't think I was going to win, to be honest. But the important factor is that I did it because I wanted the public to know the truth, and I wanted that to start a conversation, and it did. And that's where some people would say I became notorious after those things that I was doing. But some people love me for it, right? For trying to fight to do the right thing, and from that, I relish in the fact that God chose me to be in the thick of that fight, and ultimately just trust in Him when it comes
Yeah.
down to
No, that's great. That's an awesome story. And you know what's nice about it, or the nice thing about time? The truth comes out with time. So now we're at that stage where you were right, and
yeah,
hopefully people are seeing it now. So that's got
exactly.
to turn a lot of heads, and their ears are going to perk up a little bit more and listen to what Peter has to say.
For
Yeah,
sure.
Yeah.
yeah. God was right, and I just listened to Him. But yeah,
Yeah.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right then. Cool. Well, thank you for coming on, and we'll stay in touch, and for everybody that tuned in, share this, let people know about Peter, because again, even though he's not going to be in your district specifically, if he's not, he's going to help out the country as a
Yeah.
whole. So
Mm.
we need people like Peter in there. So again, thank you, and we'll catch you guys on the next one.
Send a donation. I'll send you a
Yeah,
hat. God
there you
bless
go.
you guys.
God bless.